Well, Barry Phillips, back from a long trip and a stop at Bucky's. Amazing that you made it through there. I had Ryan, I think it was either Ryan or David said Dave nicknamed it Suckies. Basically because you pull in the parking lot and you can actually hear the money sucking out of your wallet. But you made it through
For less than $20.
for less than $20. That's
Well, I
fantastic.
did fill up with gas,
Okay, yeah,
but it was the
that's
cheapest gas I bought in the entire trip.
yeah, it's not too bad. So I'm glad you made it. But well, Barry, you and I, Laura, many others had a weekend that I'm still trying to process a lot of it. Um, we walked out of there, I think, pretty exhausted. I know I am.
You didn't
Spent some
mention the
time.
name of the place.
Revive, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool Springs Marriott, Franklin, Tennessee. And when you live in Franklin, North Carolina, and you're going to speak in Franklin, Tennessee, it's tough to keep it straight.
Yeah.
But spent a little time with Daniel last night, and we were just reminiscing over some of the things that we saw. I had 6.5 hours with these young adults. These are not children. These are not youth. This is an age group of, I think, probably average age in the room was about 25, would you say?
Well, I mean, the overall group was 19 to 29. I think it was
Yeah.
on the lower half of that
Yeah. Yeah.
majority.
Yeah. So, for the most part, unmarried, for the
For
most
the most
part,
part.
trying to find their way in life, trying to figure it out. And it was quite a time. But you came in on the first session,
Hmm.
the gospel according to the punching ball.
Which was incredible.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that
And
was that was really good.
you like
It
that,
made a
huh?
lot of they walked to I'm sure they all walked out going, huh. But it was focusing on not only being filled with the breath and the life of Yah yourself, but then also giving that away to someone else. And the pitfalls that would cause that air to leak out with
Mhm.
a loud squeaking noise.
Yeah, we actually, I had an audio tape of what it sounded like in the garden when Adam and Eve fell, and the sound that it produced. Well, maybe not an audio tape, but I got as close as I could. So, if just give people an idea, if you imagine that Adam and Eve were created in the garden, they're created by the Almighty. He took a lump of dirt, but in our case, a little bit of latex or rubber balloon, and it was just kind of there until he breathed his breath into it. And so that was the concept of him becoming a living creature. And then after the fall, what happened? Well, it says, "In dying you shall die." So if you've ever heard a balloon, if you've ever taken a balloon and kind of held it and let it squeak out in all the air, that's the sound
Yep.
of the that in Grassy Creek English. That's the sound of sin taking over.
Yeah, it sounds like a mosquito on steroids.
There you go. There you go. So, I had you and Laura come in for the last session,
Yeah.
and I'm going to sit back and just ask you to give your take on that time.
Mike shared very personally from his own life experience uh, the half of his testimony that was about his redemption, his salvation, and I can almost quote Mike's prayer. I've made a mess of my life. If you can do anything with it, it's yours.
Yeah.
And so there was no repeat after me phraseologies that were offered. It was a man of desperation, and at the end of his rope, sitting on the bottom of everything, saying, "Help me." Um, I think that part might made an impact that you don't have to do something that is perceived to be official well, I got the verbiage right, or somebody pray with me that has an official redeeming license of some sort, uh, or that there's a different Hebraic roots version to the traditional altar call prayer. So Mike was just saying, I this desperate person cried out, and Yah heard him. Um, the the reasonable next step from our past would be, let's go to the altar and pray. We didn't have an altar in the room, so Mike called for, we need a row of about, some chairs here, and about 10 to 12 chairs were immediately offered up and set out in a row in the middle. And Mike gave an old fashioned altar call, something that I rarely, very, very rarely ever see anymore. In House of David, where Laura and I minister, there has been a few occasions where if you want prayer, come up here. We don't have a place to kneel. People just come and stand. Uh, Sometimes prayer for the sick involves letting them sit in the chair. Someone puts a tallit around their shoulders, and we gather around, lay hands on them, and pray over them. Here, um, young folks began to come and just kneel in front of the chairs. Well, they filled up one row, and we had to set out another row.
Let me insert something here, Barry, that you don't know. I don't know if I'm not sure if we may have shared this at dinner together, but I turned a chair around and put it out there in the front. I had no idea what was going to happen. A lot of these young people um, had never seen an altar call like this.
True.
Most of them have grown up in Hebrew roots. It's do the motzi and let's go eat. They had never seen an altar call, and so I'd been dealing with this the whole weekend, and so I grabbed a chair, turned it around, and all of a sudden I looked around, and these other guys had grabbed chairs and had turned them and put them in a line, and so I turned around and to leave to walk off and walk to the side, and the moment that I turned around, I heard the word lead, and it's like, yeah, I figured so much. I, I figured you were going to do that to me. And so I turned around and went to the center and knelt down. And at that moment, I'm thinking, I, I don't know. And it was less than 5 seconds that I heard weeping on both sides of me.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of glanced up, and most every chair was filled, and we ended up getting another row in there. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Something also happened, and I I don't know how it happened, but true to old time Pentecostal form, the girls were kneeling on one side and the guys was on
Yeah.
another.
I hadn't even thought about that.
But
But
Laura,
I did instruct them, men pray with men, women with women. So,
right. But you never said they couldn't kneel side by side. And
no.
there was one married couple that knelt side by side.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it
Yeah.
was a gender separation there, unintentional
Yeah.
as far as instructions went. So the role that Laura and I were to play was to lead in laying hands on these various individuals and praying with them. And man, this is right down Laura's alley. She
Oh,
is all filled with compassion and nurturing and loving. And if you want to get a prayer answered, my wife, she knows how to pray. Uh, so I looked over, and she was there in the trenches, in the prayer trenches, as we used to say. Um, I felt young men's bodies convulse and sob and shake as they wept openly. and poured out their innermost being to him. I had the privilege of praying with one young man to receive Messiah, and I saw the distraught figure on his face as he just whispered to me, "I'm just so lost. I'm
Uh,
lost."
we want to not mention any names on
I
anything,
won't
of
mention the
course.
name.
Yeah, I know that, but Barry, what went through your mind when he said those words, "I'm lost and need Messiah"? What was going on in your mind?
A few things. One is, buddy, I know how you feel. Another thought immediately came to mind. How long have you been in and around whatever you've been in and around in this and not gotten to a place where you know Messiah yet? I mean, he it wasn't like he was a wallflower just standing there watching,
Mm,
unexposed previously to anything.
mm-mm,
So he has been in this movement, community, whatever you want to call it, for some amount of time. Enough that he's familiar with it, but he's still lost. I guess the third thing in my mind is, okay, how do I lead someone now? What what is the formula? What are you going to say, Barry? What are you going to do here, dude? And I just kind of, in my own mind, sat back and said, okay, let's see how this turns out. What you going to say? And the Ruach HaKodesh began to guide my words to him. And as I modeled prayer for him, it was about, um, Father, I come to you. I'm lost. I need you to help me. I know you're here because you found me. Um, I'm ready. I want to enter into a covenant with you. And one of the things I said, this is a covenant that you're asking for. And even when we fail to hold up our end of the covenant, he will not let go of his. He will be faithful. But as I modeled and prayed with him, I then just turned to words of, okay, called him by name, give him your past, give him all of it. Come on, give it all to him. Give him your present. Now take your future. Give him your future. Give him your past, your present, and your future, which is something that you had modeled in one of your teachings on the first day. And when he was finished sobbing, crying, and working through his prayer, I said, do you believe he heard you? Yes. Yes. I said, then go tell somebody, go tell Mike what happened to you. He jumped up, and Mike, the change of countenance was worth the hours of driving there
mm.
and driving home, the expense of everything. To know that redemption in that way still works. Um, Somebody needs to offer him discipleship and um, uh, systematic teaching, and don't know what teaching he's hearing and from whom, but it should make a difference for him. The word should be different to him somehow at this point. I mean, his spirit's alive,
Mm.
and it's not just going into a brain; it's going into his spirit.
You know, he reached over and when you said go tell somebody, I looked over and I mean, I've been watching him and he's, uncontrollably sobbing. And he got up from that chair from his knees and I mean, kind of half ran over to me and grabbed me and wouldn't let go. I mean, it's like, and this is not a small person. He grabbed me, would not let go, and he starts yelling in my ear. Uh, you know, I can feel him. I can feel him. I'm free. And I said, "Well, tell everybody." And he just yelled it out in the middle of the room. And people are shouting and crying. And he kind of walked to the side, and I looked over at somebody that was there at the still at the altar and had been there for a long time. I said, "Hey, go over and pray with him." And he went over and prayed in the midst of them. And Barry, it wasn't that we were orchestrating this thing.
Yeah.
We had we had young adults that are not known for showing any emotion, spontaneously praying for one another.
That was the beauty of it, is young couples or young men and women praying for one another, weeping together openly, unashamedly. And in the middle of all that is, Daniel and Ryan Cribbs are playing guitars, and um, there are those that are helping with the vocals that are worshiping the presence of the Father, and His Spirit just filled that room.
Mm.
Um, Mike, that if you want to use the term altar call to describe what happened there were a few moments at the end of main room events where the main platform speakers were given their opportunity, and there was a lot of good things that were shared. There was sometimes you get the typical, well, let me break down this word for you and show you all of its meanings and everywhere it's used, and why that's insightful. And that's a Hebraic roots pattern. We get that.
Yeah,
And
place
that,
for it.
and thankfully we have that, because we're not just gliding over topically and lightly on every subject. But if the depth of learning doesn't bring us to an encounter with Messiah, we're still missing that element. And I'm not trying to be overly critical here, but there is at times a mindset that says, if the church did it, I'm not going to do it. And that's what I came out with when I left the church pastorate and turned in my credentials. My mantra was, because Yah had spoke to me in my backyard here, do not recreate what you come out of.
Yeah.
I over applied that to where my mindset was, if the church does it, I'm not going to do it. Now, there's some things that we still don't do. I don't pass a plate to take, as someone said, take an offering. We don't take. We offer a place for people to, as an act of worship, go and present their gifts. We don't have membership rolls. We don't count heads. I don't know what the attendance is from one week to the other. I can give you an estimate. Basically, it's the room was a quarter full, half full, mostly full, and that's about what we count. So there are some things I don't find necessary.
Yeah.
But there were some things that we did in those days that maybe we need to recapture a bit. You and I have talked before on several occasions about allowing the gifts of the Spirit to operate. And there are those that will relegate that to, well, it's church, and therefore we just don't allow that. But we better get back to allowing the full expression of the Ruach HaKodesh and the gifts, or we'll never survive. But one thing that we desperately need to get back to, and I would love to have seen an opportunity, is it's time to pray. You've heard the word. We got to pray. Now, there was an occasion where one of the speakers said, if do not want to walk out of here without acknowledging the understanding, there may be people here who do not even know Messiah. Mm-hmm. And we have a prayer team, and they're meeting at this place over here. And if you want prayer, this is your chance. And I remember 2 years ago that there was time allowed where prayer people stood,
yeah,
and folks could come up and ask for prayer, and it was powerful. We need that. We need to give people a chance to respond immediately in
Mhm.
prayer to what they're hearing.
Well, Barry, you said, give opportunity for this. I'd like to take the word a little bit farther than that. We don't need to just give opportunity. We need to be facilitators of. We need to be encouragers of.
Yeah,
Uh, we need to uh, actively be asking for and giving a place for His Spirit to work in people's lives. Um, you talk about the gifts of the Spirit working. We had at least, let's see, one, two, three, I believe, four different young people that stood up and gave what I would say was a prophetic word,
for a
at
prophecy.
least an admonition. One of them stood up and said, I don't speak real well." So we've nicknamed him Moses too. Uh, and I mean, he just nailed it, you know. Um, it was just remarkable to watch. It was not unusual to hear a different language in the room. It
True.
was, you know, you know me well enough to know I don't just allow someone to walk up and take a microphone or to speak. And someone this one young man raised his hand normally I would just kind of as I did with one person say, this is not the time for that. Um, yeah,
Yeah, so I remember that
but
one.
I just felt like, this is something, we need to I need to, I need to bring this in. They had done this in a very much a humble way that brought forth another prophetic word. And then on Sunday, another man who doesn't say, he said, "I don't speak in public." Yeah, well, he sure did the other day. Brought forth a very encouraging and I believe on the edge prophetic word. So we do need to be not just giving opportunity, but literally just kind of trying to lead people into that, facilitating it.
I want to mention this, Mike. There has been, and I confess it's come out of my own mouth more than it should, a relegating of this particular generation um, to terms that are not altogether positive. Uh,
Mm,
on your Facebook page of the day, you mentioned something about snowflakes. Well, let's be mindful of what cloud they came from.
mhm,
Yes, there is, as a whole, in this particular age group and sector of a generation, issues where certain mindsets that are not productive or helpful seem to be prevalent. But it's not everybody. You can't put an entire generation all in one basket and say that's the way all of them are, because that's not true. There are those of that age category, let's say 30 and under at this point, that are hardworking, that are industrious, they have goals in life, they have yearnings to be productive and fruit bearing. They don't follow the mainstream things of this life. You mentioned a couple of times while we were there, we've seen young men and young women wearing seat on their garments. All of the conversations in the hallways were not frivolous and goofy, and we allow for teenagers to be teenagers. They're going to laugh and yuck it up and have a big time in fellowship, and that's what they do, and that's fine. But there were some in-depth conversations going on out on the
mhm.
patio outside the hotel, um, sharing life experiences. There were young folks singing and worshiping.
Oh yeah,
They could have been doing
spontaneous.
anything and everything, but they were singing there, playing guitars together and worshiping, and unashamedly doing so in the main lobby area. It was common to hear guitars playing and young folks teaching each other how to play better and
Yeah.
sing and worship. Um, so to say that this generation is hopeless, helpless, and we need to start from scratch. No, we have some keystones that are lively to build the house of Elohim with. And I'm going to try not to get on the soapbox here, but the idea that our adversary wants to promote is that there is a divide between the various generations.
Yeah.
The only difference between your and my generation and the one that was being ministered to in your 6 hours of time this past weekend is experience.
Mhm.
It's the same life experiences. What they're going through, you and I experienced in some form, and a lot of times at a greater level than what they're experiencing. The only difference between us is how long we have been in this experience. So we're not that different. We were raised different. There was a generational attitude shift, yes, but life experience, it's the same. The drug experiences, the promiscuity experiences, the religious
Yeah.
experiences, the cultural experiences, the shifts that were taking place between when you and I were in grade school to when we became adults. The shifts in culture were extremely dramatic. So we're no
Well,
different than they are. They're no different than we are. But our adversary wants to start putting these deep divides and say, you
yeah,
can't understand each other because you just haven't lived what they live. That's a lie.
it is, and they don't know unless we talk with them, and this is a concept that I'm trying to hammer in that, I don't go there to talk at them.
Right.
I don't go there to talk to them. I go there to talk with them. And that means I've got to be open. I've got to be honest. You talk about the things that generational differences. Well, okay, well, you got drugs today. Yeah, we had, yeah, we had a little bit. Promiscuity. Let's just talk about Woodstock. Well, we had a pandemic, AIDS. The difference in this generation versus our generation, Barry, is that you may live we were able to live through a mistake. Things happen in this generation. We had, you might take a bad pill, which thankfully I was scared of those. But, back then you might have taken a bad pill. Today you take fentanyl and you don't wake up from it. It's the judgment over I'll say the consequences of things are much quicker today. Uh, I ask a question. Are they responding to our expectations for them? Which means if we have no expectations, are they just responding to that? Are they responding to the words that are being spoken over them of the snowflake and well, they're just lazy. Yeah, I got one guy that drove, you know, took 5 days off from work, drove down there, drove back, was at every single meeting, and the next morning had to get up and mow 9 yards because he has a landscape business. Okay, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me about lazy. Maybe they're, and I got this, well, they'll just all be on their phones and they're not gonna be listening. Was anybody not listening in that room?
I didn't see. I might have seen less than five in the two
Mhm,
times that I was in there check their
mhm,
phones.
mhm. Yeah.
but the
Fine.
vast majority were focused on what was going on. And as you say, Mike, if we're using, derogatory terms toward them and describing them in negative fashion, realize you're prophesying over them. You can prophesy curse or blessing, your choice, and you get the end result of what you offer.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is why I did that post last week of instead of judging the snowflake, maybe people want to look at the cloud that produced them, you know, um, and maybe it's us that needs to change. Yeah, the generational difference, people would say, well, they need somebody their own age. They need somebody that can relate to them. I just don't feel that I can't relate. I just that's not a that's not something that goes through my mind that I can't relate. Why can't I relate? I was there once. Uh, we all were, but being open, being honest, and being available, being approachable. I was sitting out in the hallway. I had just a few minutes of my time I mean, what it's like you walk out your door and it's like of the hotel room and it's your time is not your own until you go back in that door. But I'm sitting out in the hallway talking over some things with Eddie Chumney, some research that he's doing with the Dead Sea Scrolls and the so-called Essene community. And I sat there for about 45 minutes talking to him. As I'm sitting there in the middle of the hallway, there's people going up and down and all over the place. It's noisy and stuff. This young lady comes walking by me. I know of her. I've met her, but we've never sat and had a conversation together. So she walks toward me and kind of almost by. She stops. And so, I just hang on just a second, Eddie. And I looked up at her and she said, would you mind, Mr. Clayton, would you mind if I prayed for you before you go in to speak to us today? I just, yeah, yeah, that's fine. And I was sitting in a chair on a sofa there, and I had my hand over on my knee, and she knelt down next to me, very, and she said, "Would you mind if I place my hand on your hand?" I said, "No, that's it's fine. I mean, we're out in the open in front of everybody here." And so she began to pray, and I just sat there, humbled. Um, I didn't know what to say. I really didn't. But to think that these young people, when you allow them the place, they will enter into it and they will step up to it. But we have to be active in making that place for them. Um, Instead of treating them, and this is where I get that, the rising generation. Moses, I just taught this a few minutes ago, Barry. Moses got the final orders. Okay. Climb up the mountain. You're going to die, Bubba. I didn't actually say Bubba, but climb up the mountain. You're going to die. You're going to look out. They're going in. You're not. The first thing out of his mouth is, don't leave them without a leader. Raise up someone. Raise up someone. You and I don't know. I mean, I'm praying for, walking in, I'll walk away, oh glory. Uh, I'm praying for that one. I'd love to see that one. But if I don't, raise up a leader. Don't leave the people without someone that can lead them in.
Well, if this weekend is any indication, there are some very capable rising generation folks to step into whatever footprints that we leave. So the idea that, well, once main platform speakers are dead and gone, this thing is going to sink. I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
could
think
either.
so.
Well,
Um,
very go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to mention this. Beyond this 6 hours of ministry that we've been discussing, um, Laura and I were discussing this coming home. I did not hear combative conversations anywhere. I didn't see any of the negatives. No one was discussing earth shape or calendar days or name pronunciations, and I heard a variety of everything.
One
I didn't hear
one
any of
one
that.
tried.
One try. Um, I saw a lot of fellowship, a lot of neck hugging, heard a lot of laughter. I saw a lot of joy. Um, I heard some good words that encouraged. I um, I met some folks that was a delight to encounter and get acquainted with. Um, I didn't see that the
Even you,
hotels.
Clay.
I didn't see any of the hotel staff roll their eyes and huff and puff.
No.
Um, I didn't see debris and trash all over the place. And the state of the Hebraic roots community, as indicated by this particular weekend, though we might have done some things different, though we might have said some things different, might have changed some things, the overall atmosphere and presentation was very positive, and I was encouraged by that. But I also want to take just a second to say thank you. If they hear this program, those that were involved in the nuts and bolts, mechanics, operations, facilitating, organizing, Kathy Wright in particular,
Yes.
I know she worked many hard and long hours in organizing, putting stuff together. It was well done. There was not confusion. The only confusion was like, where is salon room 1 and 2 or 10 and 12? Or have you seen this
Yeah.
breakout session room? That was about it.
Yeah.
But overall, the schedule was plain, simple, straightforward. People got to where they needed to go. And I'm just appreciative of those that made this thing happen.
Let me give a word of thanks also, Barry. We're not paid for being at Revive.
No.
Um, be quite quite honest here. Of course, I always try to be. I can't stand when somebody says that. It means, well, usually I'm lying to you. But as a speaker, they comp my registration, but we're not paid for being there. And so this is on us. This is on our ministries. The expenses. The Bucky's cheap gas, but they also made you pay for it. At least I think they did. Um, and so this is the people that support this ministry, Remnant of Israel, Joint Hashem.
Yes.
You were a part of that.
Yes.
You were in the room, and I thank you for that. I thank each of you for that. I had two people that during the time that I was there came and gave an offering directly to me, which covered my expenses for being there. And I'm very thankful to those that
Yes.
did that.
Yes.
I can't do this without people that help financially. And so I just wanted to give a word of thanks to each person that regarding Join to Hashem, that believe that this is an investment worthy of something. What we've shared to you with you, tried to share with you in these about 45 minutes, is some of the what we know of today, the return on your investment, and I pray that it's a great return for each person.
Ditto, ditto, and ditto. Thank you for saying it. Folks, thank you for sharing this in your social media, for your comments, for your prayers, for your support. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. So until next week, Mike, shalom, brother.
You got it. I'm going to go take a nap.